Hi, I'm Danny Elliott, and this is First Time for Everything, a podcast where I talk with really interesting people from all walks of life about their first time doing something. These people started out just like you and me, interested in something and wanting to try it out. Maybe they're a little bit scared, but something in them made them take that leap towards their dream. I really hope that these conversations inspire you to step out of your comfort zone and go after whatever it is you've been wanting to do. And who knows, maybe someday we'll be talking about your first time. Getting closer. Ooh, getting closer. Hello, first timers. Today, I'm talking with speaker, empowerment coach, and self defense expert Jennifer Cassetta. Jennifer is the kind of woman that makes you want to level up. She is such a badass. She has her third degree black belt in Hapkido, a master's in nutrition, and develops programming that helps people feel strong, safe, and powerful. We talk about why there aren't more women in the self-defense industry yet, how we can empower ourselves to not live in fear, and how we don't need to wait around for anyone else to save us except ourselves. Can I get an amen to that? Okay, this is First Time Kicking Ass with Jennifer Cassetta. So happy to have you with us today, Jen. Kate, our mutual friend Katie, had told me about you, and she was like, "You really need to check this woman out and like get on the self-defense game." And I've been wanting to do something for a while, and yeah, then I came across you, and I'm so happy I did.
Wow, thank you so much. I'm excited to speak with you, and thanks to everyone listening.
Yeah, totally. So, also too, just a heads up, I actually pulled a bunch of my girlfriends for questions today because I thought that it would be good to just get a couple different people's input on this since I feel like it is a real like female issue. How did you get into self-defense?
Oh gosh, so 22 years ago, I stepped into a dojo, a martial arts studio in New York City for the first time and fell in love. Um, I was introduced to martial arts by my dad. My dad had been doing martial arts. He started in his 50s and kept going until he died when he was 78. But he was so healthy and fit and amazing, and I just saw how it changed him for the better, and I got curious. So, like I said, I stepped in, found the right school, first of all, which makes a big difference, and fell madly in love. And then a couple things happened that year that made me latch on like nobody's business, essentially, like dive way deeper. And one was almost dying on September 11th.
Wow.
Yeah, which is a whole story, obviously. And the I guess the bullet points of the story is this. I showed up to work 3 blocks south of the World Trade Center. I was the first tower fell. I was pushed into this utility closet with a bunch of strangers, completely paralyzed in fear, until a woman came over to me, grabbed me by the shoulders, shook me, asked me a question. She asked me my name, so it forced me to take a breath and to move out of the frozen state. I told her, and then she said, Jennifer, I'm Nancy, and you and I are going to get out of here today. So then, hours of running from building to building and looking for shelter, finally, I took Nancy to the martial arts school that I had been training at. So, this kind of sense of safety and a place of refuge became this metaphor. After that, I had no job, so I was bartending at night to pay the bills, and all I wanted to do during the day was go to this safe place
Mm.
where I was feeling stronger every day, mentally, physically, spiritually. And that really, obviously I didn't know it at the time, but looking back, that was a huge turning point in my life, my career, my purpose, my mission, all of it. So, yeah.
Wow. That's incredible. I'm so glad that you're here.
Me too.
Yeah, that's an insane story. And it's really incredible how those kind of things unfold.
Yeah.
You know, like that woman found you and then your instinct was to go to this place, you know, like something in you just drew you there.
Yeah.
Um, the point you were making about like finding the right school actually like leads into my next question really well. It feels like the world of self-defense is like very male dominated, and I guess I was just wondering like what do you think needs to happen in order to bring more women into that world? Is it a thing of like finding the right school? Like what is the sort of like gateway
Yeah.
point you think to encourage more women to get into this?
Great question. And I would like to say that I feel like I've tried to be that gateway drug, right? Like take
Yeah.
one class with me, and so many people have after just like one class or reading my upcoming book, The Art of Badassery: Unleash Your Mojo with Wisdom of the Dojo. Not that it's out yet, but people that have heard that as a keynote form, so many have reached out to me afterwards and said, like something about it made me curious, made me want to go and find a martial arts school. So first and foremost, the obviously the need, the want, the curiosity has to be there. And then when you are like searching which school to choose, that's where magic can happen, and also a lot of things can go wrong.
Mm,
I know even 22 years ago when I was looking, it wasn't about, and this is what people will usually ask me, well, which style of martial arts should I choose? And I
yeah.
say it's less about the style and more about the culture in the dojo.
Mm,
Um, so I tried a couple that were just in my area where I was working in downtown Manhattan, and like one I couldn't even stand the smell of people's feet, like so I was like no, like like
well, yeah.
hell no. And others you just felt like sometimes it's just this male energy that's too much, like it was just like I don't know how to describe it, but it doesn't feel welcoming. But the
Yeah.
one that I stepped into, I could see like half the women, half the black belts were women. There were women in leadership positions, teaching, and there was just this really great culture and energy around it. So I had these role models to look up to, these fierce women that were like swinging swords and just kicking ass. That I was like, yes, like I want to
Yeah.
be part of that.
Oh my God, I feel like you're actually describing I don't know what your sort of like faith roots are, but I was raised in born again Christian like culture. I feel
Mhm.
like you're describing like my search for connection outside of that, like female in leadership, like equity, like no toxic masculinity sort
Right.
of things happening. I'm like, yes, this is
Yeah.
you're speaking my
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. So that's how you would find your own martial arts school. Obviously, I mean, I can go into a whole podcast on the differences and styles, but at
Sure.
the end of the day, it's really what do you want to get out of it? I found community. I found, it was like a second family almost. It
Yeah.
felt that good, and that's what kept me there for 10 years.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great point because I hadn't even thought necessarily I think I was naturally leaning towards like what does it feel like when you're in there? I hadn't even thought about the style of martial art. I was like I'm very big on energy and like what it feels like to be in a place. So yeah, that is a really good point.
Oh yeah.
And then I guess the more places you kind of try, maybe you start to zero in on what kind of style you want to focus
That's
on.
what I would totally say. Start by finding out what's in your area. Obviously, if you're in a city, you have loads more choices than if you're in a smaller town. And look out for ego, look out for toxic masculinity, look out for a lot of injuries. You don't want that either.
Yeah.
Um, and just, you want to be supported
Yeah.
and also pushed. There is that sense too where I was pushed and but there was a good balance.
Yeah,
Never
definitely.
felt like scared or in danger, but I definitely felt out of my comfort zone every single day that I stepped onto the mat.
Which I definitely like feeling like I need that in my life, like a little, you know,
Push.
yeah, a little push to do something that's not right
Mhm.
here, you
Yeah,
know?
I mean, after the last 2 years of staying home, don't we all need that?
Yes, for sure, for sure. Um, my next question is, I guess maybe more of like a conversation point, but one of my girlfriends wanted to get your input on like do you feel the way that like violence against women is portrayed in like film, media has had any effect effect on women like taking or not taking action to learn self-defense? Like, I think maybe in the sense of like, does it feel like we're kind of taught to rely on men to protect us? Um, but I don't know, I guess like, do you have any thoughts on that?
Loads of thoughts. I don't really know where to go with it other than like the things that are popping into my head.
Yeah.
From a perspective of what students have told me in the past, some misconceptions I think around safety are, oh, well, I'm married, so I mean, I'm not going to get attacked. Or I just call my partner, and if I'm feeling unsafe on the street, and then that'll save me from being safe. And so these are just things that I think people very unconsciously think and believe that are not true. And again, yeah, it's probably because what we're consuming in the media always portrays that, right? Who's getting attacked? It's usually not like the happy family woman or whatever, it's like the single,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Woman out at night. I will tell you, I had an ex-boyfriend who was more than happy to put me in front of a deranged homeless person when we lived in New York. So don't count on your partners, ladies.
Yeah. Yeah. I think my biggest message is don't count on anybody
Yeah. Yeah.
because that person on the phone can't save you in the minute,
Mhm.
in the moment, I should say. Your marital status, your dating, none of that matters,
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
and I don't want to be a downer, but that's kind of the truth. No one's coming to save us like we need to save ourselves.
Yes. Yes. That is so true. It's interesting because earlier today I was texting with a friend of mine who was saying, she was like, I'm so sorry, I like can't think of any questions to ask you. I'm not really in a lot of like risky situations at this stage in life.
Right.
And I was like,
Right.
ooh,
Yeah.
that is
Another
a
one.
dangerous way to live. And like, because I think, I said to her, I was like, I know we're not going out like to clubs and are at risk of like getting roofied and stuff, but
Right.
like, I, for example, a few weeks ago, I saw like a lost dog in our front yard and it was like 10 p.m. I went
Mhm.
outside to try and wrangle it and grabbed a leash and just started like walking down the street. And this car started following me and I had to like run away from them and hide on a neighbor's front porch. And
Wow.
so it's like you never know
Mhm.
when, and like I'm not out like going doing crazy things or whatever, but I think it's dangerous to think that
Yeah.
like like you're saying, if you're married or at a certain point in your life that like you won't need these skills, you
Yeah,
know.
I have a terrible example, but it's the one again that immediately comes to my mind is against that misconception of, well, I'm too old or
Yeah.
whatever. A woman in her 70s was attacked and raped in Central Park while she was like bird watching. So, like nothing precludes you from being a target, essentially.
Yeah.
Nothing.
And like to that point, like do you have any recommendations on sort of like how to stay alert but not live in fear?
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. I mean, that's the number one thing. If you can master that, right? Then
Yeah.
you can feel empowered and not paranoid. That's
Yeah.
one of my taglines.
What a good tagline. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, practicing situational awareness, that's the first step in all of my trainings, whether it's a self-defense or safety, Zoom or in person, whatever I'm teaching. Situational awareness just means you're aware of your surroundings when you're out and about, taking in information. So really, that's an empowered way to move through the world, I think. All you're
Yeah.
doing is being aware. So
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily have to feel like you're being paranoid to check your back from time to time. If you can just reframe it as, I'm just gathering information,
Mm.
right? And gathering that information could serve you in loads of ways besides just keeping you safe,
Yeah.
right? You could solve puzzles, you can protect someone else, you can, who knows what you can come across when you're just doing that.
Yeah.
So it's a really powerful practice that, like I said, can really help you avoid danger whenever possible.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, That is such a great point. Yeah, to be empowered rather than paranoid, and have it maybe that involves some thought work to get to that place where you can just kind of be like, I'm just observing the world around me versus like I'm ready.
Yeah.
But on that tip, I'm from New England. I lived in New York City for 10 years. I have a lot of that, like, I'm a
Hmm.
Sagittarius. There's a lot of fire. My
Yeah.
girlfriend Lindsay and I were talking about how we tend to run towards conflict.
Mm.
Um, and we are not trained in any capacity to physically deal with that. We just like have our mouths basically. And
Yeah.
in a situation like that, do you have any advice on like de-escalating yourself to kind of prevent you from getting into something that maybe you're going to be unmatched in
Yeah.
what you're coming up against?
It's such a good point because, again, growing up in New York, I feel the same. And then I was in the city for 15 years. My dad was ex NYPD. Like, it's very
Okay.
in my
Yeah.
blood to mouth off, and, kind of like a don't mess with me attitude comes naturally. However, I feel like storytelling is more powerful here than just like how to de-escalate. But
Yeah.
it's a reminder, like I still have to get these reminders from the universe. I was just on my block here, and now I live in Santa Monica. Think, oh, it's La La Land, nice and safe. And someone was speeding down my block, and my block is like one block. Like
Yeah.
there's no need to speed, and there's kids and animals. So immediate reaction.
Yeah, yeah. But they fly
Like,
up. Yeah.
my fingers are just up in the air, and I'm like, and the guy stopped, and I got in my car, and now all of a sudden he's following me and revving his engine up against me, and then he gets out of the car, stops, like pulls in front of me to stop my car, so I can't even go anywhere, and is pointing to his like waistband where there's supposedly a gun, right? I'm like, how did I got myself into this mess, you know?
Mm.
So yes, he's a lunatic and right, but there's nothing I can do about that. And the police, I have the police on the line, and they're saying, well, he didn't technically shoot you, so there's nothing we can do, right? Just drive to the police station if you feel unsafe. I'm like, great. And eventually he got back in his car, and the whole thing was over. But it scared me, and it scared me enough to remind myself that avoid danger whenever possible.
Yeah.
Just don't and it's really about getting like keeping your ego of
Whew.
out of it, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, someone's speeding and someone cuts you off and they cut you off. Nowadays, I just don't have the faith in humanity
Yeah.
that someone is not gonna like lose their mind and pull a gun on you.
Yeah. Totally. I had an almost exact situation happen to me when I first moved to Nashville.
Mm.
And, in New York, it's almost like a term of endearment to tell someone to fuck off to their
Yeah.
face.
Yeah.
You're like, you keep it moving. Like,
Yeah.
I have never
Yeah.
gotten into a fight with someone where we have said that to each other in New York. Like, we've just kept going. And
Yeah.
here, oh my God, it's like this personal affront. And,
Mhm.
I did the same thing. I was on the highway. This guy was riding me, and I just like flipped him off very casually. Followed me off the highway. We got
Yes.
stopped at a light together, was revving his engine, tried to chase me off a street, and I lost him. And
Oh,
same thing, I
no.
called the police department. They're like, well, nothing
Sorry.
happened, and so we can't, like, and and I was thinking the same thing. I was like, wow, like, firstly, like, he deserved it. But secondly, yeah, it's like you really have to check in with your ego. And like even yesterday, this guy was being like a massive asshole. We were waiting to pull into a parking spot. And he kept honking, and we had our signal on. He saw people were getting into the car, and I got out of the car and
Mm,
started to and then I was like, this would be a very different situation. Like if I was him and he was me and he got out of the car, I would have immediately shut it down. But I also think something about a woman
mhm,
getting aggressive with a man makes them more aggressive. Like I think there's something about their power being challenged that
mhm.
they like cannot stand. And he just got more angry and like was driving around like flipping me off from like the other side of the parking lot. And I
Yeah.
was like, okay, like we're both wrong in this situation, but the ego thing for sure, I think maybe that's just a practice.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, if you're purely just looking at it as safety first,
Yeah.
right? My
Yeah.
safety is the most important thing,
Yeah.
then getting in an argument with someone is not. Like it's not
Yeah.
important. And just
Totally.
get home, get in your safe vehicle and go home and like
Yeah.
decompress in some other way, you know?
Totally, totally. Well, I'm so sorry that happened to you. I'm glad you're okay. And,
Hey, mute.
you know, karma, I believe, will take care of that guy. Let's see. Another one of my girlfriends was asking, she has a 12-year-old daughter, and if you had one move that you would share with her, like what's your
Mhm.
like go-to sort of self-protection
I
move?
love
I'm
it.
sure it depends on what situation you're in and what you're
Yeah,
dealing with, and
it does, because obviously height and all of
yeah,
that is going to matter. But
yeah,
again, I have a story of this example exactly. Um, Again, it's sad, but there were two women, two young girls. They weren't even women yet; they were in their teens,
yeah,
down in San Diego a few years back, at least 5 years or so, and I saw this on the news. Both accosted by the same guy, right? And the first girl, the guy pulled, they were running in the San Diego hills. And the guy pulled over to the first girl with his car and said, "Get in the car." And okay, we don't know what happened, but she did. And she was found dead, unfortunately, and assaulted, etc. The second girl, same guy, said, "Get in your car." She was like, "No." And again, we don't know exactly what happened, but she said in the courtroom, and this is what I'm watching on TV, that she took the palm, her heel of the palm, right, straight up to his nose
mhm,
and, yelled and ran away.
yeah,
And I just thought like, whoa, what a difference in outcome,
yeah,
right? She's at the trial, and when she had a chance to speak to the murderer,
yeah.
she said, she gave a wonderful speech. Again, this is a teenage girl, and then at the end and said, "And how's your nose?" And I was just like, "Oh my God." So I think of that every time I teach that
Yeah.
one strike.
Mhm.
Again, is it gonna disable somebody? No. But sometimes it just takes one or two moves to have an attacker change their mind, or just to have enough assertion behind you for the person to say, like, maybe not today, or I'll go find someone else.
Effort.
Too much.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I always think of that story, and it's a really sad one, obviously, because of the first girl
Yeah.
who didn't make it. But that second girl with the palm strike, her dad was a martial artist and taught her that move.
Wow. I practiced that one on your move a day
Oh,
Instagram.
good.
Yes. Yeah. Hopefully we'll never need to use it.
Exactly.
But yeah, so okay, that would be, I think anybody, able-bodied can practice
Hmm.
that. Also, if you're listening, follow Jen for her move a day on Instagram.
Move a day to keep the creeps away.
Yes, move a day, keep the creeps away. Oh, goodness. I wish that like Instagram was a thing back when I was like really young and living in New York, because as I'm sure you have many stories yourself, so many times, so many creeps just like
Mhm.
following you, touching you, whatever,
Yeah.
and just to be able to. There was actually one guy who lifted my skirt up in the subway, and I chased him down and like karate chopped him in the carotid artery. Because I didn't know anything else, and I realized he was like very drunk, and then he became like terrified of me, like at this crazy
Great.
moment.
Well,
But
again,
yeah,
sometimes it's just that energy that you have, that like self-protection.
yeah,
Back in the first year of my martial arts training, I told you 9/11, but also I was grabbed on the street. That was like the second thing. And I went ballistic. Instead of the freeze, I went fight. And
yeah,
I was like, this is not going to happen. I am this, how dare you? It's like that energy of like,
yeah,
how dare you put your
yeah,
hands on me?
yeah,
And I'm going to turn into an animal going after you. And that's
yeah,
really how I feel. That's really what I want women to tap into, is like this animalistic, primal, self-protection mode,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's so, it makes me like excited.
Same, and I think that's the thing that I need to learn to balance because I can go there very
Yeah.
easily. That was the first thought that came to my mind when he lifted my skirt up was like, how dare you, not
Hmm.
on my watch,
Right.
and just like the blinders came on.
Hmm.
But I think
Yeah.
it's like being able to keep the blinders off and
Yeah.
like be aware of like the
Yeah.
whole situation. My situation worked out. He was smaller than me. He was
Right.
inebriated. So like I had a few things going in
Yeah.
my favor, but
Yeah.
you know,
Doesn't
maybe
always.
it doesn't always. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I
Um,
think a good scolding though is warranted there.
yes. Yes, totally. Of course, a subway worker came down and just sees me railing on this guy. And she's like, "Damn!" And I was like, "It's not my fault." But yeah, and I was like late to a gig, and she's like, "Do you want to file a police report?" I'm like, "I don't even have time. It's
Right.
not, you know."
Right.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, I'm sure we both have many New York stories.
Yes. And with that in mind, I would just say also it is good to know kind of where you are in the country and what it's like because again, maybe if I were in Texas where most people are gun owners, right? I would definitely not allow that inner rage to take over and maybe be a little more calculated in my response versus being in New York where no one really has guns on them and
Totally.
it's just
And
different.
considering like race as well and like where you are in the country in terms of like there's police around, like,
Yeah.
there's there's a lot of different
Hmm.
things to sort of weigh out for sure. But I guess on that tip too, I was completely by myself in the subway. A train had just come, I had just missed, so I was totally alone. And I'm sure that's one of the reasons that happened. Like, do you have any tips for women who are doing a lot of things alone, like hiking, biking? Maybe they find themselves on a subway platform by, alone.
Hmm.
Um, and, and I guess maybe any age specific tips too. I know you're mentioning that woman in Central Park who is in her 70s. Like, does your advice kind of change based on how old you are and like what you're kind of,
Not so much, to be honest. I always recommend having self-defense as, your at least the basic knowledge.
yeah,
Because not only does it give you the physical moves of how to protect yourself, but it makes you feel a little more confident, makes you feel a little more capable,
yeah.
which could manage fear,
Hmm.
right? Because that's really what's going to take over. So, and to back up a little, that is the first lesson that I always teach is fear. What happens to someone when they are struck with fear? Fight, flight, freeze, right? You kind of don't know which is going to happen until you're in it, and then how to move through that. So I teach people breathing techniques and how to speak to themselves to figure out whatever the next right move is for them.
Yeah.
Um, I know I went on a tangent there. So
That's
so
all
just
super helpful.
yeah, just having that knowledge, I think, is more helpful. So if you're doing things alone, whether it be in the outdoors or on the subway, commuting alone, first of all, don't be afraid of it. Do those things. Like,
Yeah.
I, I hate when I hear like, oh, women shouldn't be running by themselves. It's like, oh, we have to be in a pack now to be safe.
Yeah.
But having some tools, I am a proponent of personal safety tools, non-lethal, so pepper spray, alarms, things like that, where again, you know how to use it, you're comfortable using it, and it just gives you that bit more, little more confidence to be able to protect yourself if needed.
Yeah. I actually got a Saber spray that
Oh,
has
good.
a seatbelt cutter and a window breaker on it too.
Uh-huh.
It's like $14 on Amazon and it totally makes I actually got it because a friend got chased by a pit bull and as much as I
Oh,
love animals, that's the
yeah,
last thing I want to do. But I was like,
yeah,
if it comes down to like me and my
yeah,
dog versus like someone's
of
loose,
course.
aggressive dog.
Yeah,
But yeah, it definitely makes you feel a little bit better just knowing you have like something on you.
something.
Yeah.
Right. First, if you look at it like a structure of a house, like your
Yeah.
foundation is your personal safety and self-defense.
Yes.
The awareness, the setting boundaries, the powerfully communicating them, the de-escalation, then the self-defense. And then on top of that, then you want to layer in some other personal safety tools.
Yeah.
Again, personal, it's personal.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you're sort of your food pyramid of
Yeah,
self-defense.
I know. I just don't know why I just made that up.
Right. It works. It's a
Yeah,
good visual for
yeah.
sure. Um, I guess last question. What are some like good first steps for people interested in getting into self-defense, whether that's like actually really committing to like
Mm.
practicing a specific martial art or just like learning a few skills to kind of have for like day to day.
Yeah. So after 22 years of doing this, I know that most people aren't going to go to a dojo and put on a uniform and do the whole thing for 10 years like I did. So that's, if you do that, wonderful. It'll change your life. You'll absolutely love it. But if that's not for you, that's not for you. Um, a little self promo here. I do have an online course called She Warrior Self Defense, where it's all the basics and you get to learn from home. So it's you pay once, but then you have it for a lifetime. So um, I highly recommend that. And then if you feel courageous and want to get out with other people and practice, there's things like Impact. And then obviously check in your neighborhood. Just go on Yelp and put in self-defense because a lot of martial arts schools will will do like either one-off seminars or a series of self-defense seminars, so you get like a little taste but you don't necessarily have to sign up for the whole dojo, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, those are all like super easy things seemingly to do and
Yeah,
you
or
also
go on my TikTok and just learn one move a day.
yeah, go on Jen's TikTok, her Instagram. Yeah, and you also do like you'll go to different like businesses and corporations and give like presentations as well, right?
Yes, I mean, prior to COVID, I would travel for that. I still, now I'm traveling again, but now I'm doing so many virtual
Oh, wow.
self-defense Zooms for companies that have employees all over the world. So literally, like in 1 hour, I can reach people in Europe and here and all over the country. I mean, it's like really cool. So that has opened up, obviously, in the last 2 years, the ability to reach more people, which is really nice.
Incredible. If you're listening, hire Jen. Hire her. Man,
Exactly.
thank you so much. This is
You're
it's
welcome.
super enlightening. I've been, I've been following you for a while and like been wanting to talk with you for a while. And I'm so glad we got to. And I think a lot of women specifically will really benefit from having you be their gateway into this world and feeling empowered to just like, defend themselves.
Yes, and speaking of, the actual gateway is, well, I don't have a copy of the book yet, but The Art of Badassery. This is coming out in on August 23rd, but you can pre-order it now. The premise of the book is really to self-empower, and it goes from white belt to black belt. So it uses martial arts as a metaphor. So it truly is like the gateway.
I love
Um,
that.
and it's not about the physical moves, how to protect yourself, but really how to do that from the inside out.
Do we pre-order on your website or like
It's
any?
on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all the things. It's on the website just links to all those places, but it's easy to find.
I will be pre-ordering for sure. So excited for that to come out. Congrats on that, by the way.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jen. We're so lucky
Ooh.
to have you on today.
Yeah, and if anyone has any questions, please DM me, whatever. I'm easy to connect with, and I love to answer all these questions. So thanks to your friends who really started the conversations too.
I'm so grateful Jennifer made time for us today. I really think that this is one of the most important episodes we've done so far. And Jen's knowledge and empowerment she teaches people to have is quite literally life giving. If you'd like to keep up with Jen on Instagram, you can find her at Jen Cassetta. That's JenCassetta. You can also take her She Warrior Self Defense course in the comfort of your own home at shewarrior.teachable.com. And you can also pre order her book, The Art of Badassery Unleash Your Mojo with the Wisdom of the Dojo, at jennifercassetta.com. You can follow me on Instagram at Danny Official. That's DAANI Official. And if you would be so kind as to subscribe, comment on, and share the show, it really helps us out a ton and helps us grow our community of fellow curious people who want to be first timers. Our theme song is performed by me, Danny Elliott, and co-written and produced by my friends, The Royal Foundry. First Time for Everything is produced by Two Sheilas Productions. Thank you guys so much for listening today, and remember, it is never too late for your first time.